This is the Cycling Over 60 podcast, Season 2, Episode 43, Leading a Trail Organization, and I'm your host, Tom Butler. Thank you for joining me for another week of my cycling adventures as I look to get and stay fit later in life. If you go to the Cycling Over 60 Strava Club, you will see some information on the National Senior Health and Fitness Day Challenge. We are celebrating National Senior Health and Fitness Day by setting a group ride challenge. I will be giving a $50 REI gift card to a random club member who rides next week as we look to do at least 3,500 miles for the week. I actually think this is a light goal since last week we collectively rode for 3,000 miles. But the focus is to see just how far we can go. Take a moment to become a member of the club and keep posted on our progress next week. I frequently ride an exercise bike after I eat to help take the post-meal spikes off my blood sugar. I will normally put in 30 to 40 minutes on the exercise bike in a day. Even if I'm going for a bike ride, I like to do some time on the exercise bike immediately after I eat. This week, I put some SPD pedals on the exercise bike. My wife Kelly has never ridden with clipless pedals, so I put them on the exercise bike so she could get used to clipping in and out. That means that I started clipping in for my exercise bike rides for the first time. I found something very interesting. It is a difficult workout for me to pedal with only one leg. Now, I think that means that I am not pedaling in a circle as effectively on my road bike as I should be. I don't seem to have much strength when I'm pulling up on the pedal. I am really excited to discover this. I think doing a few minutes of one leg pedaling daily will translate to getting more out of my pedaling on the real bike. I'll be interested to see if that pans out. I am going to run this by a physical therapist next week. He is a cyclist, and I'd like to see what he thinks about this idea. I'm continually looking for information that will help me reverse insulin resistance and restore metabolic function. I am not alone in looking for suggestions. My wife Kelly is an avid seeker of healthy living knowledge. We are now, however, having a bit of conflict concerning what dietary choices are best for me. She has become convinced that I need to eat very low fat if I'm going to have long-term success. She believes that it is important for me to eat carbohydrates. I, on the other hand, am equally convinced that I need to restrict carbohydrates and continue to eat a relatively high-fat diet. Now, you might be thinking, why is this difficult? I know that Kelly wants nothing more than for me to be healthy, and she wants me to feel supported. But the truth is, she thinks I'm making poor decisions when it comes to meal choices. That means when she sees me struggling, she feels compelled to try and steer me to what seems to her to be better choices. And that feels to me like she is being unsupportive. In fact, I want to avoid sharing when things aren't going well right now, to keep from getting the message that I am messing up. I believe that this is one of those things that is going to require some expert advice if we are going to become unified in the battle against my metabolic dysfunction. I have some specific problems with the information that Kelly is studying, but I need an expert in carbohydrate and fat metabolism to help clarify things for me. I do think I've found someone who would be perfect to shed some light on the issue, so wish me luck as I reach out to her. And if you know someone that does a lot of studying in this area, I would love a suggestion about who I could talk to as well. I have so much respect for people who administer organizations that focus on bringing something good to communities, while at the same time dealing with financial and other resource restrictions. I have an organization like this that benefits me immensely, and that is the Foothills Trail Coalition. This is the organization that focuses on helping the trail to be the best it can be for the community. I see trails as so vital to my cycling success, and I wanted to invite Shayla Miles, Foothills Trail Coalition Executive Director, to join me to discuss what it's like to lead a trail organization. Here's our conversation. As a listener of this podcast, you know that I spend a lot of time on the Foothills Trail. And it gives me so many opportunities to appreciate the work that goes into a great trail. So I'm really fortunate today to be joined by Shayla Miles, Executive Director of the Foothills Trail Coalition. Shayla, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Now, the first question I like to ask is, do you have any memories of bicycling as a kid?
Yeah, I love this question. It had me dig deep in my memories. I grew up in Kitsap County, and Kitsap County doesn't have a ton of like safe trails and sidewalks for biking, especially in the area that I grew up. There was just no sidewalks, and just drivers kind of driving all over the place, and that sort of I sort of bring that kind of history and feeling, to my work because I know it's a barrier for a lot of folks in Pierce County where the Foothills Trail is located. So that's what I would say is my memories are like bicycling in my driveway, which was like straight uphill, which was obviously not super fantastic.
Well, I am familiar, with Kitsap County. I've done a couple organized rides out there and done some other rides out there, and it is a hilly place. So I
Yeah.
can,
And I should say it's getting better. There's a lot of
okay.
work in Kitsap County to expand trails and make it just a really safe place for bicyclists and active transportation. But, growing up there, especially in my neighborhood, it was definitely not a place where I felt safe. I could ride on the streets to like school or wherever.
Gotcha. Can you talk about your background? And it seems like you have an interest in furthering the work of nonprofit organizations. And could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to work in a number of different fields, which is really a strength I think I bring to this position. So I've worked as a teacher, as a restaurant manager, a wine director, and for the past 8 years or so have worked in the nonprofit sector, specifically in fundraising, although I've worked at sort of small nonprofits, which has sort of required me to wear multiple hats. So I've led programs and events, and I've managed volunteers, and I've worked with donors to help connect them to the amazing causes and grow the impact of the organizations I've worked for. And then I also had the opportunity to get my master's in public administration with a focus on nonprofit leadership. And that just really brought out this like passion for the nonprofit sector. And I think just in general, it has a potential to solve really big problems. So nonprofits, I feel like, can be so much more nimble than governments, while at the same time being really trusted partners in communities, and have a little bit more reach into communities than I think governments can have sometimes. So I've seen that really clearly in my experience working for the Foothills Coalition, and I just continue to be interested in finding ways to contribute to the nonprofit field, especially, in light of what I'm seeing and learning as I work at the Foothills Coalition and specifically work with a lot of different government agencies.
I think it's fantastic. And I do think it's a certain kind of skill to when you're working with the stakeholders of a nonprofit organization and people to get passionate about it and to harness that passion and to understand that passion. I think that's fantastic. What attracted you to the Foothills Trail Coalition?
Yeah, I mean, if things are going well, I'm on a trail most days in my life. After I gave birth, almost 3 years ago, my daughter will be turning 3 in June. I had a really bad health scare, and just getting out and walking on the trail nearby my house, I live by the Pipeline Trail in Tacoma. It was really a lifeline. And I think the importance of trails in communities also just have a number of aspects that I find myself really interested in working to contribute to. So, trails as a way to encourage recreation, connection to nature. They are free and accessible means for activity, especially, as we were in COVID and coming out of COVID. You didn't have to pay to use a trail, and gyms were shut down. So they also just have that incredible health benefit to those who choose to use trails. I also think they're really interesting from an economic development perspective. They spur on trail-based tourism for businesses. I know for me, like whenever I go and look at a trail, I want to know, okay, what are the coffee shops and restaurants? What can I do, when I've finished the trail, or maybe, use the trail on the way out and get a coffee or a beverage and then come back. I also think that they are a really interesting strategy. And actually, recent studies from the International Panel on Climate Change just put out this great study about how can be a key strategy in the effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from vehicle use. So I think health benefits, connection to nature, economic benefits, safe access to recreation, improving our environment, that hits on like a lot of the things that I find myself caring about in my day-to-day life.
Can you describe the Foothills Trail Coalition as an organization? Has it been around a long time? Is it what's kind of the background and kind of what is the way that it functions?
Yeah, so the Foothills Rails to Trail Coalition is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. It really supports the expansion, maintenance, promotion, advocacy of specifically the Foothills National Recreation Trail, though we do a lot of work for trails in general in Pierce County and trail funding in the state, which I can talk more about. But, I think of a trail like a linear park that spans multiple government jurisdictions and landowners as opposed to a regular park, right? That's just in one place. And so those different government jurisdictions and landowners don't naturally collaborate necessarily. And so the coalition really brings those stakeholders together while amplifying the community voices to make sure that we get those community voices heard in trail development. And because we're a nonprofit organization, we can truly be a nimble partner to our government counterparts, helping to fill in gaps or add capacity in the various aspects of trail development, maintenance, and programming. So hopefully that was like a kind of in a nutshell, a good sort of foundation for what we do or kind of what we can do. Now, the coalition itself has been around for 40 years now and has really just been a powerful force in the community for the Pierce County trail system. And, truly the Foothills Trail would not be what it is today without the Foothills Coalition. And I mean this truly from the on the ground work they've done to building the trail and maintaining the trail to fighting some of the petitions to get to stop the trail. There was the Citizens Against the Trail group back in the 80s and 90s. And so the coalition was really able to again, be that nimble partner where the government couldn't necessarily take a political stance. The coalition was able to come in and support the trail and really mobilize people in support of it. Our organization has gone through many phases. It started as really a volunteer-led community organization. They had this vision for converting the old railroad line to a trail system that has been, that is a movement that's been happening across our country. And as I mentioned, they did a lot of on-the-ground maintenance, trail building. There was a courtesy patrol, and like I said, a history of fighting those anti-trail petitions. In keeping with the needs of our partners, the coalition has really professionalized over the last year. So we've changed sort of the way we operate, where now we have staff and, have created a 5-year strategic plan to really lay out our vision for how the coalition will help support the build out of the Foothills Trail in the years to come. Again, being responsive to our government partners, we're now taking on projects such as helping to build a new trailhead and helping to leverage large sums of money for big trail infrastructure projects like the White River Pedestrian Bridge, which I know everyone is super excited about. That's going to open later this year. And also bringing in new partners to help move trail development forward. We just secured a National Park Service technical assistance grant, which will add expertise and capacity to help expedite the development of the trail in the Carbon Canyon. We do remain true to our roots. We're still volunteer-led in terms of our board. We have 16 excellent board members, volunteers, and a number of other volunteers who come out and do everything from trail maintenance to help me with the website. So definitely moving in a more professionalized direction to help with the needs of the county, which are really, there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of issues around capacity, but we still have that strong volunteer and community base and background.
I imagine every trail is somewhat different. There's quite a network of rails or trails out there now. And I see the Foothills Trail as being unique, but I also see that there must be a lot of similarities. I imagine that behind every well-maintained, a trail with good amenities and things like that. You talked about it being a park, like maintenance of not just the pavement, but what's around the pavement. I'm guessing that any trail that has that across the nation also has a group of people, kind of like the Foothills Trail Coalition, behind it.
Yeah, I think it depends, but I think usually if it's really a world-class trail system and has a lot of resources, it generally takes a lot of citizen advocacy because typically trails are part of parks departments, and typically parks departments are sort of the last thought in any budget just because they're really not seen as essential services, which of course I would argue vehemently against. But to make a trail, it takes a landowner, usually a government jurisdiction. It takes a plan, so you have to have some sort of documented plan. There's feasibility studies and permits and all of these sort of, again, sort of this government way of building physical capital objects, and then having a plan to maintain it, of course. So a landowner, a plan, and then the third part is sort of the people, right? And that's where trail organizations can come in and mobilize community voices. They can serve as advocacy. They can help leverage funding, as the coalition does, where we can help raise money for a match to show some community support. That really gets points awarded in a lot of state and federal funding grant cycles. So that's when I say we've leveraged, $3 million for the White River Bridge. We were able to come in and provide that match component and help get that $3 million grant from the Recreation Conservation Office in Washington. So yes, I think there are different models and it looks very differently just based on the location and, again, sort of that political appetite for getting trails built. But having the community voice, having a nonprofit that can sort of be that backbone of support and advocacy and community voices is really crucial, I think.
Now, I am biased, clearly. I'm on the trail all the time, but do you think it's justifiable to label the Foothills Trail as one of the best trails in the nation?
I mean, absolutely, it's justifiable. And it's designated as a national recreation trail for a reason. So it's this designation that really just indicates our country's sort of highest caliber trails, with the intention of kind of showcasing trails, recreation access that have sort of that rural and urban community component. And so, the Foothills Trail, I think, is unique in that it really has that rural beauty while still having access to larger cities. So you are almost feel like you're at the footsteps of Mount Rainier. And certainly the vision for the trail is actually to extend all the way to Mount Rainier National Park, to the Carbon River entrance side. So you get those incredible views of Mount Rainier and the foothills, but then you also have access to larger cities like Puyallup. And then again, the future vision is to have it come all the way into Tacoma. So just an incredible mix of, beautiful scenery, amazing streams. It goes over, South Prairie Creek, which is one of the biggest salmon bearing creeks in Pierce County, but then access to like great coffee and great restaurants, and just, it's really fantastic.
It's bookended by some pretty amazing natural things. You've got Mount Rainier when you're riding on the trail, like if you feel like you're riding to Mount Rainier because it's just right there in front of you the whole time on the trail. And then, eventually ending up the other side on the Puget Sound. I mean, it's just, again, it's a trail that runs between some really cool places and then through some really cool places, and seeing, even just kind of near me in South Prairie where, you see the farm history basically of Washington State.
Well, and just some places that, I mean, you might otherwise not go to unless you worked there or lived there. But I mean, just, I don't know if you've ridden to Buckley, but like, I love Buckley. Like, I love their downtown Main Street. I mean, South Prairie too has a great little coffee stand, Trailside Espresso, I think. I mean, it's just really incredible that you could have this combination of, yeah, natural beauty as well as just like great places to former restaurant person. I love a good like drink or coffee experience.
Now, balancing the needs of various trail users, I imagine, can be challenging. And I'll tell you, I think I had an experience that very few people have on any trail anywhere. I'm riding along and someone's walking their calf on the Foothills Trail. And so I thought, that is like a fantastic statement to me. And I wish so bad I would have stopped and just asked some questions and like, what's the story here? Is this your 4-H calf that you're out exercising, or just what's the story here? Did it get away and you're walking it home? But there's a lot of different users on the trail with a lot of different interests. There's hikers and cyclists and horseback riders and others. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that gets balanced.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really takes intention. From the coalition standpoint, we really try to cultivate a board of directors to represent those various interests and voices and user groups, and also just from different locations along the trail. We would love to hear more from equestrians, from horseback riders. I grew up in not like big cities, but yes, it is striking when you're like, oh, there's a horse right there. So, we'd love to get some equestrian voices on our board. Though we do, of course, have a strong partnership with the Backcountry Horsemen of Pierce County. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, the coalition, we can help direct folks to horse trailer parking where it might not be kind of a focus of maybe some of the county signage or other, jurisdiction signage. We can help provide that, since it does tend to be sort of geared towards walkers, runners, and, cyclists. I think another interesting thing that we're sort of grappling with is the e-bikes, right? So balancing the need and sort of the convenience of e-bikes that can go a little bit, that can go faster, with some of the areas on the trail that are really busy, like right outside of Ording. There's just always this really busy stretch where you get a ton of kids, and it's right by the skate park. And so it is a challenge, but that's where we try to be really intentional about how we communicate, and just having an FAQ on our website. And we always try to be really responsive to questions on Facebook, because we do get a lot of those questions about, speed limits for e-bikes and where can horses park. So it's a balancing act. We definitely need to get more folks on our board that have that represent a broader range of users. But I feel like we do a pretty good job responding, as those issues come up.
I recently attended an open board meeting for the coalition, and I thought there were a couple issues that were discussed that illustrated maybe some of the unique challenges that can be brought about when administering the coalition. I'm guessing that there are times when in your role that there's like competing interests that you have to kind of mediate between, or kind of figure out how to get people all moving the same direction that have different views. One of the issues that was talked about was that there is a bridge closure. Now, I live up really near Buckley. And so there's this bridge closure that kind of divides the plateau that Buckley's on from the valley that a lot of the trail goes through, like through Ording and Puyallup. And so it's a significant segment of the trail. I'm wondering if you could talk about, kind of in your role, how some of the challenges that are there, some of the things that you think strategically, everything about that key bridge being closed.
Yeah, and sometimes it can get challenging, right? Because the Foothills Coalition, we are a nonprofit. We are not the government landowner. We are not the trails owner, or we don't really have, I mean, of course we have say, we have influence, but we can't open and close the trail. That lies within the power of Pierce County. And so it can be a challenge when, yeah, people are upset with the coalition for something that, truly we can't really control. Now, that being said, the coalition has a really strong relationship with Pierce County Parks specifically. That is the entity of the county that owns and operates and maintains the Foothills Trail. And so, there are competing interests, but it is in everyone's interest. I want to make this really clear. It is in everyone's interest to reopen the trail, right? Because that bridge, we refer to it as spiked in ditch bridge. It being closed is a huge issue, as you mentioned, from preventing folks from accessing the full 21-mile trail. And not only because we're at the start of the warm weather season where we see an increase in recreational trail usage, but also because the Foothills Trail is a transportation lifeline in the more rural parts of the county, where there's really no public transportation, or folks who don't have access to vehicles. They use the trail to get to work, or to go grocery shopping, or all of their daily services. So people use the trail to bike or work or access those services. So a prolonged trail closure is really the last thing that we want to see. I think where the coalition, I think, shines and has strength here is we have really good relationships, not only with parks, but we have cultivated relationships with, the public policy makers, the decision makers, which in this case is really the Pierce County Council, Pierce County Parks, and the Pierce County Executive. And so we have been reaching out to those council members, meeting with them, and really talking about our priorities with this bridge, which is getting it open. I mean, a 2 to 3 year closure is really unacceptable for the reasons that I just mentioned. And so again, the coalition as a nonprofit can be nimble. So we want to make it clear to the county that we are really offering our resources and anything we can do to help get this bridge replaced or repaired, whatever the county decides that they need to do, sooner than that 2 to 3 year timeline that's been laid out. And just to be clear, that 2 to 3 year timeline is because it takes a lot of time for a government typically to complete a public project. And there are safety reasons for that. There are due diligence reasons for that, right? Anytime a government agency spends public funding, there needs to be a certain, procurement process that happens before the government can just go and spend money, right? They don't want to see government entities just spending money pell-mell, right? So that in this case is a detriment because the county has trusted contractors that they regularly use that could be hired and come in at a much quicker process than perhaps what the current process is going to look like. So that's one piece where we're kind of coming in and sort of pushing on that to make it quite clear that we'd really like to see the process be quicker than that 2 to 3 year time frame. The other piece of it is providing some sort of interim solution. Typically, for trail closures, there's no detour offered. And I understand sort of why that decision usually is the case. Usually trail closures are not very long and have sort of limited impact. It's not like a bridge or some sort of vehicle route that would need a detour. In this case, it's really challenging, right? Because it goes through, as you mentioned, it goes through a canyon. There's a reason there's a bridge there. And there's not really a safe route. Bicyclists are using the highway, State Route 162. And the coalition has done some work reaching out to WashDOT to get some side sweeping so it's not as rocky or debris filled. So it's a little bit less harrowing for bicyclists to use the highway, right? But that's not ideal. 1, 2, it's really scary. I've heard from cyclists who feel like they're putting their lives on the line by riding that highway to get around the closure. And of course, the county is not going to send, kids who bike on the trail, right? They have a high standard, right, for providing a safe detour. So in the interim, then the coalition is going to continue to ask the question, what are the creative solutions being done? What have other organizations been done to, maybe we don't provide a full detour that can allow for bicycle traffic, but maybe there is a reinforced, very, sort of simple steel bridge that can transverse another section of the canyon that people can get off and walk their bikes across one at a time? Or what are some other creative solutions so we can have just something in the interim while the bridge is repaired or replaced? That longer process, we need a temporary solution. So that's the second thing. And then finally, like I said, the coalition is just going to be really clear that our resources are available, our sort of the man, woman, person power is available. Capacity is often an issue in these situations, right? So there's only a couple people working on this issue at parks because there's limited staff. So how can the coalition come in and offer our resources and time to help the county, to help the Parks Department get this situation solved? And then I know this is a long-winded response, but I'll just say one more thing that just, again, this kind of speaks to sort of the overall issue I alluded with, not in every situation or government, but certainly with Pierce County, it oftentimes can feel like parks is treated sort of as that, oh, we can cut from parks, or, oh, we can, take away funding where it might be needed. So I just think, in summary, I think this just speaks to the larger issue of needing to adequately fund our parks departments, that, trails aren't just used for recreation. Recreation isn't something that is, not important to communities. Communities really want access to trails. Trails provide one of the only free, accessible means of recreation outside of our public parks for people. And so we need to fund our trail system.
Yeah, I think it does speak to people understanding what the true value is of a trail like this. And I think I'm an example of that. I was really developing some health issues that, if I just let them go, they were going to be expensive. And the trail is something that helps me feel comfortable, and now I drive and get on a different trailhead because I skipping the bridge that's out. But I'm motivated to do that, but making it easy. I think I'm an example of so many people that are expensive as we get older, who, unless you're active, unless you're taking care of yourself, and the trail is really important for me as a resource to do that. It's the place I feel comfortable. The highway out there, I feel like I'm a pretty accomplished cyclist at this point, but you share the road with some logging trucks, and to me, it doesn't really matter how accomplished you are. I mean, that does not feel good. So, again, I think understanding the value of how trails contribute in ways that people maybe don't think about, I think that is important.
Absolutely.
You talked about cultivating relationships, and I think that's such an important word because it's the thing that you must do all the time. I'm imagining that you're continually cultivating relationships, and then it's times like these with the bridge closure and some pressure that cultivation is really important to have.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it goes both ways too. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people who are really angry at the county for, taking a long time on this. And maybe, the argument could be made that, communication wasn't right away. But, I also see that because I have a relationship with Pierce County Parks, I see the work that has been done and sort of the thoughtfulness and the carefulness and the risk management and really truly understanding, the different aspects of what was wrong with the bridge. Why does it need to be closed? Why does it need to be closed and not just open to a minimal amount of traffic? I mean, I have been privy to be part of those conversations with the park staff, and I, as a result, really trust our partners and the work that they are doing. And I know that they are doing their best to, get this situation addressed and fixed. And unfortunately, it's just sometimes it's just beyond the scope of one department, right? We're talking about interplay between Pierce County Parks and Public Works, and as well as the council, and just how, and then the communications marketing team, because that is another a part of the county. So I just really want to be really clear that I have every faith and trust in our partners at the county because of those relationships, right? And then yes, on the flip side, the coalition is fortunate to have a good, really good relationship with the community members. We are represented by a board who live in those communities, who ride and who walk on the Foothills Trail frequently. As much as I can, I am out in those communities, meeting with people, meeting with our membership. And so I'm hopeful that those strong partnerships, that I can convey a sense of, hey, I know this is super frustrating. It's not an ideal situation. We are doing everything we can to expedite. And I also believe that Pierce County Parks is doing everything they can as well.
At the board meeting, there was another issue that was related to the bridge closure in this case, but I think it could be related to other things that I hadn't really even thought about. And that was somebody was talking about how trail users have been behaving poorly with landowners around the trail, and maybe because of their frustration with the bridge closure or whatever. But it's really just disappointing to hear. And for me, it's like, I hope none of them are cyclists, but I'm sure some of them are cyclists behaving badly because it just reflects poorly on, anybody riding a bike if somebody is being a jerk to a private landowner near the trail. Can you give your perspective on that? And do you think there's anything that the coalition can do with that, or kind of your hands are tied just by different people making bad choices?
Unfortunately, we can never fully control what others do, of course. You're referring to the reports, I think, that folks, trail users, in the effort to get around the closure, have been accessing private property. And specifically out there, this is an area where private property is often labeled, and there are very clear signs of, do not trespass, do not access. And so we've just seen those requests, those signs ignored, to the detriment of these private landowners. And yes, I want to absolutely be clear that it may not be obvious, but the landowners around trails are really crucial. Having good relationships with those landowners, because anytime there's a trail issue, or if there's trail expansion projects or there's a trail closure, we rely on those relationships with landowners to grant access if we need to access the trail, to have it repaired, or an easement, again, if there's like a project going on or a construction project. So yes, we rely on those good relationships, both the county, as I mentioned, and the coalition, because we put on races throughout the year, and those private landowners often have places that we drive through to park for our races, or what have you. So those good relationships are really crucial to being able to just maintain a healthy trail system. The good news is as soon as the coalition sort of heard from the county that that was happening, we put out, some Facebook posts and emails, just messaging, asking folks to, hey, not trespass. And we've heard that there's been a significant decrease in that sort of behavior. So I'm really grateful. So I imagine it's been, folks like you who use the trail, or, other folks who have read our messaging and, maybe have been out there seeing the bad behavior and saying, hey, don't, and here's why. So I'm just really grateful. Our trail community, I think, takes after each other, watches out for each other, and watches out for the trail.
Celebrate Trails Day happened recently. I'm wondering if you could talk about any events that you guys had going on.
Yes, yes. So Celebrate Trails Day, just for folks who don't know, it takes place annually, I believe the fourth Saturday in April, and it's a nationwide trail celebration organized by the Rails to Trails Conservancy, so sort of our like national counterpart. And the coalition was really excited to host one of our volunteer stewardship work parties on Celebrate Trails Day. We were at the South Prairie Trailhead and near the South Prairie Creek. And at this work party, we celebrated trails by removing a ton of blackberries and other invasive plants. Typically, this time of year, you've probably seen it if you've been on the trail or other county trails, we get vegetation that starts like encroaching on the trail and threatens to take over. And also, you have other vegetation that sort of starts to grow up and out, and then sort of prevents those like really clear sight lines that are important, especially for cyclists, and especially on a trail with like when you get like the turns and the curves. And so we really feel like these work parties are really important and crucial. They're part of our partnership with Pierce County Parks. And so we tackle all the deferred and routine maintenance issues that the county can't quite get to, removing that vegetation and improving wildlife habitat. In this case, as I mentioned, we were at the South Prairie Creek, which is one of the most important salmon spawning areas in the county. And so helping to improve the habitat there, I think, is really, really important. And we'll also be out I want to mention, we'll be out in the fall planting trees. So Celebrate Trails Day happened in April, but we are doing this work all spring, summer, and fall long.
Well, I have to find a way to get more involved with that. Saturdays don't work for me, so I've got to figure out other days. But that's a fun challenge to have, is figuring out how to get more involved in helping to beautify the trail, or or maintaining the trail in some ways. Can you talk a little bit more about maintenance as far as the actual surface? It is it's not like a road in the middle of a city. I mean, it goes through, it's beautiful, but I think part of that beauty and part of, being like you said, a park, to me, I see challenges as far as roots and things and freezing and thawing and all those things. How does that process of maintaining the surface happen?
Yeah, well, I should first just say that, the county maintains the trail. We support through that capacity of our trail maintenance work parties. But honestly, the county staff, they're out there, that work plan is usually identified ahead of time. And they're not using the trail for recreation. They're out there working, they're doing their jobs. So they're not maybe aware of some of those issues. So I would say, first off, if you see those issues, you can report them. So Pierce County does have a web reporting portal that you can use, and you can send a message, you can share a photo and sort of, communicate those issues. Similarly, you can always do that, Facebook message or email the Foothills Coalition to identify those. So like I would say identification is like one of the main barriers because again, folks in the park department are mostly at their desk working on their computer, or they're out in a field taking, tackling projects that have been sent months in advance. So helping to identify those is really important. The second thing is funding. So, our Pierce County, again, the Parks Department is really a lean team, and they do so much with the small amount of staff resources that they have. But yeah, I would say citizen advocacy for trail maintenance is really important. You could show up to council meetings and advocate for that, especially during budget cycle meetings, which are usually in the fall. I would also just say that, the partnerships play a huge role in that. So the coalition has had the opportunity to partner this year with the Parks Department on tackling some of these like tertiary issues that are important, right? Safety, sight lines, crime prevention by environmental design. But some of the work that we're doing is not necessarily on the surface of the trail, it's around the trail. And so as we build that partnership, we hope over time we can help sort of, help fill those gaps. So whether that's helping to, provide some funding for additional trail maintenance or helping the capacity of the grant writing team at the county. So us writing a grant on behalf of Pierce County to get more maintenance dollars. Those are all different ways that the coalition can be sort of nimble in our partnership and help support some of that work, because the pavement work takes, obviously, that's like specialized workers, specialized crew, specialized materials that just require more thought, more funding, more intention around them.
So, talked about having the Foothills Trail Coalition, growing the organization in kind of a professional way, making sure that you have staff there. That requires funds, and then, helping out in a lot of ways. What are the ways that you guys? What are your strategies for raising funds for the coalition?
Now that we have professionalized with staff and written that 5-year strategic plan, one of our big goals is to create a sustainable organization, which does include having a diversified, multifaceted fundraising revenue approach to things. So one of our biggest revenue generators, I will mention, is our race program, specifically the Rainier to Ruston Relay Race, which happens on Saturday, June 1st, which is National Trails Day. It's coming right up. And this brings nearly 2,000 people out to run on the sort of the Envision, the 50-mile route of the Foothills Trail. And that provides a decent amount, a substantial amount of our overall operating revenue. And in fact, that race is now in its 22nd year and was originally started by a volunteer, John Selby, who he's Sasquatch. He will literally dress up as Sasquatch on the day of the race. But he started the race out as just a fun thing for friends and family to do. And it's grown really into one of the biggest revenue generators of our organization, and was in fact how they could hire me, the staff member that came on at the end of 2022, to sort of further grow our revenue streams. I also should mention that we do rely on membership for support. So we have a robust membership program that starts at $20 a year, but goes all the way up to $500,000. There's a $500 and $1,000 level. Our Trailblazer Society, if you really want to be really impactful, and there's some benefits to membership as well. People that are members get our great quarterly newsletter, and our Trailblazer Society gets a little bit more of the insider info and just kind of some special things for being such a sustaining supporter of the organization. My background is in fundraising for nonprofits, and so I've also instituted a major giving program, as well as a planned giving program for those who want to truly leave a lasting legacy. It's only a small portion of our nation's wealth is actually in liquid assets. The rest of it is in land and real estate and retirement funds. And so folks who are able to, have the benefit of having land or property or, real estate, or retirement funds that are, maybe more than they need or more than they plan to leave to their kids, they can name the coalition as a benefactor in their will, or donate through their retirement program or donor advised funds. So those are really incredible, meaningful ways. We just recently sold off the final piece of land that we had gotten from a land donation, and that alone was just really, transformational in terms of the type of funding that it's able to provide for us, and enabled us to, invest our resources a little bit more wisely and have, sort of endowment programs or other things that yield interest that further support our mission. So that's a really important way. That program that we are implementing now takes time, but I'm very excited about that. And then we do have a number of grants that we go for, both government grants and really just trying to form relationships with our local foundations who are aligned with supporting our mission and vision. We've gotten support from the Forest Foundation, as well as the Ben B. Cheney Foundation. So have been really fortunate to have some relationships built with local foundations that are really, interested in helping to improve people's lives here in Pierce County, and understand that trails are one of the ways to do it.
Fantastic. Okay, what I need to commit to right now is that I need to become a Trailblazer Society member. I think, I believe that I'm on the trail enough. I love the trail and everything. And I don't know what I signed up for when I became a member. And I have to admit, full disclosure, I just recently became a member. Shame on me. But, I think I need to up it to that $500 Trail Society membership level for sure. So
We really appreciate that.
I'll commit to do that. And if anybody else is on the Foothills Trail, I'm encouraging to do the same thing, because it is, as you're hearing, there's so many things about it that are worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, and one thing you might be interested too is we do have a business membership program that begins at $200 a year. I don't want to stop you from doing trails. You definitely should. But I want business owners out there to know that you can support the coalition and the trail, and you get an ad in our newsletter, which goes out to over 800 households. So that's just a nice way to also just get some ROI on your investment.
Awesome. That's awesome. I want to talk more about Rainier to Ruston, because I think it's such a cool event. I am not much of a runner, but maybe if I got the understanding is that there's, it's a relay, and I think you mentioned it's 50 miles. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about, I think, 50 or 52 miles. And yeah, you don't have to be much of a runner. You just have to be able to do, whatever leg, whatever portion. And you can have a team of up to 6 people. So some people do it solo. They run the whole thing themselves, which is amazing and
That is
crazy.
amazing.
But, others, it's just a really fun way that they can sort of get together with a team. And yeah, you're experiencing basically the full vision of the 50+ mile trail. So you start at the Carbon River entrance of Mount Rainier National Park. Start bright and early. Gosh, I'm up there by like 5 a.m. I think the first wave starts at 6:30 a.m. And then, yeah, there's 12 different legs. So you can run as many or as little as you work out with your team. It's just a great way to experience all the different like aspects and beauty of the envisioned trail system.
And it ends in Ruston, which a lot of people listening won't know what Ruston is. Can you describe a little bit about Ruston, and then what will you have kind of set up? What will finish line be like?
Yeah, so the Rainier to Ruston is basically the waterfront trail that runs along the waterfront, the Puget Sound in Tacoma. So sort of from where you enter near Port of Tacoma and Foss Waterway Seaport, and there's a great new park called Melanie's Park down there, and just runs the waterfront, but Ruston just refers to the Tacoma waterfront, and it's just a fun, catchy name. There is a big party at the finish line. It's super fun. It's going for about 8 hours from about like noon to 8, because since there's different start times and teams all take a different amount of time and there's different numbers of runners, we just have a big party. There'll be a DJ. We have a beer garden. We're giving out food. It's just a great sort of shared experience where you can celebrate like this amazing achievement, and people bring their friends and relatives, and you get lots of swag, it's like one of the best races I hear for like medals and swag. And they've got a massage set up at the finish line too. I mean, it's a really fun time.
I just think, grabbing a group of 6 people and going out and doing something fun. If you break it up 6 ways, then it's manageable. Doing it solo, it's not manageable in my opinion, but breaking up among 6 people, I see that as manageable. And it just seems like there's not many things that would be as picturesque and as fun and as Rainier to Ruston is.
Yeah, it's really truly a singular event. I don't know of a single event like it in the Pacific Northwest, frankly, in the Puget Sound region for sure. And it attracts people from other states, other people who are interested in running and races will come and fly to this event. So we actually just heard that we got a grant from the Port of Seattle for the 2025 Rainier to Ruston, because they were so excited about the potential for driving tourism. And again, it goes back to that economic development argument that not only is this race a crucial way that we support our work of the Foothills Coalition, it's also a huge tourism driver as we think about ways to just attract people and to support the many small businesses, not only at the finish line in Ruston and Tacoma, but also just the small businesses along the way. There's this great coffee shop in Wilkeson that I stopped at last year when I was doing sort of my part, called Nomad. And I just love it so much. And I know they get a lot of business from the R2R. So I want everyone to, who can, to participate and just pay attention to where you're driving and just see truly the specialness of the region, of the different businesses along the trail, as well as the beauty of the trail itself.
But Wilkeson is a very small town. No, I don't think there's even a stoplight in Wilkeson. I'm sure there's not. And so it's really a quaint place to start, but also some really fun things there in Wilkeson. If anybody's interested, just go to rainiertoruston.com, and you can register, and it is coming up. So you don't want to delay. You want to get on it.
Yeah. And if you don't want to run it, but you want to volunteer for a couple hours and get a credit for, a certain amount of money off of your next year's registration, you can also sign up to volunteer. So
Yeah, awesome. What final advice would you have for someone that was really passionate about advocating for trails, really understands the value of trails and the value of active recreation in their community? What recommendations would you have for that person, like acting on that passion?
yeah, and I would say I'm still learning, and I think it's really place-based. So I think the first place for people to start, and this is going to sound really technical and wonky, but like get sort of familiar and acquainted with the plans in your region and area. Like, is there a regional trails plan? Is there a master plan for the trail in your community? If not, that could be a starting place. Wow, like what is missing? Who's working on it? So that would be the next thing is, are there any local organizations that are looking to work on trail issues? And it doesn't have to be a trail coalition. There are lots of like safe routes to school organizations popping up all over the nation. There are lots of walking groups. One of our board members is part of the Volksmarch group, and a lot of the times those volunteers are really plugged into sort of the advocacy opportunities. So I would say like get a little bit familiar with what your city, county, regional trails plan is, if there is one, and then also find out who the players are, like who are the nonprofits and the other community groups that are advocating for those issues, and ask them what they need. If there's an opportunity to volunteer, volunteer. If you have the capacity to give, to donate, do that. So it really just depends on sort of how involved you want to get. Do you want to give your time, your resources, both? I think those are some of the easiest ways to start, though they're not easy, of course. And then, yeah, I would say that, attending council meetings, again, at the city or county level, being an advocate for ensuring that recreation departments, whoever is managing your city or local trails, that they are getting the resources that they need. You could also just call your local parks department, or again, whoever is managing your trail system, and ask them what they need, because they probably know the ins and outs better than most about what are the challenges. I've been so surprised to learn that just every county, every jurisdiction looks really, really different. And we have some cases in Washington State, like the Olympic Discovery Trail. Gosh, they're making such incredible strides over there, but they have a lot of political will. They have multiple like 13 different cities and jurisdictions that have come together to write this big federal grant, and just citizens that are really committed to advocating to their politicians. And I think that's like a gold standard model. We're not quite there yet in Pierce County, but we are working so hard to build that movement and to be able to, really help add capacity to the county, to our county's, ability to expand our trail network.
Shayla, this was fantastic. I was looking forward to having this conversation, and, like I said in the beginning, I see like the work of the coalition is out in front of me as I'm writing all the time. And I know it's a busy time, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to answer some of these questions. I still have a lot more, but I won't overload you too much here. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
I'll talk to you later. I'm happy to report that I did, in fact, get online immediately after our conversation to up my membership level to the Foothills Trail Coalition. And hopefully I will get connected soon to people who can help me do some work on the trail. I think it is important for me to have that kind of ownership over a resource that I use so much. As a reminder, check out the Cycling Over 60 Strava Club. Become a member of the club and join us in the challenge to see how many miles we can put in as a group next week to acknowledge National Senior Health and Fitness Day next Wednesday. No matter how many miles we do, I believe that just the fact we are getting out there and working to be fit and healthy means that we are already ahead of the game. So plan some fun adventures for next week. And remember, age is just a gear change.